Hello everyone, Sterling White here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Those of you on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that gray bell that's somewhere on the left or right hand side. And other people who are listening while driving, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, and shaving your head at the same time. I tend to do that. Actually not, I've attempted it. Do not attempt that by any means. Would appreciate it. It would mean the world to me, whatever platform that you're on, to leave a review and comment below with any questions that you happen to have. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And on these, me talking in front of a camera, I'm essentially providing experience shares of my journey as an entrepreneur, a real estate investor in the industry. So I'm not perfect by any means, and I give you the trials and tribulations, the successes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So now we're going to be jumping into creating a winning team in your acquisitions department. And I actually got this structure from a book that I read of an individual that was completely outside of the real estate sector. That's what I enjoy, really learning from others. There's just abundance of knowledge out there, and it's just about cutting out. There's some books that I've read that have been absolute crap, but I've still been able to take away something good from it. So that's why it's always good to just ever evolve on the education and know that there's no stop to learning, and sky's the limit on that. So this book, Predictable Revenue, I forget the name of the author's name. He was the VP of sales within Salesforce, and this exact system I replicated, meaning that the translate to the real estate sector is there's a researcher. The one that researches to find the properties that fit the criteria that I provide to them. So apartments between 75 to 150 units that are in working class settings that have the rents between 700 to 1,000. So anything under that gets disqualified, and then anything over that, luxury or built within the past 1 to 2 years, that gets scraped out. So there's a very defined list that has been built personally versus going out and buying a list, and then from there do the skip tracing of the owner, because majority of these are owned in an LLC, so it takes some additional digging, and then once find that owner decision maker, then skip trace additionally to find their contact information. So formerly I was doing all of these roles, which was I was doing the researching, I was doing the cold calling, and I was closing the deal. So that was full-time in itself. This is what brokers do on the full-time basis. And the reason why I set up this whole infrastructure was, one, I was, working, I would say, quite a bit of hours, which I don't mind doing that, but I took a step back and said, how can I be more efficient with time? Because I've got everything else that I have going on with investor acquisitions and all the other things with running the business. And I had this whole infrastructure, or the outbound that I was doing on the acquisition. So that was a lot to handle. And when I read that book, it absolutely clicked. So going back to it is, there's a researcher, there's a cold caller, and then there's, in essence, an acquisitions manager. So the researcher identifies all the properties, gives them the criteria. Indianapolis, I'll give you a prime example, Indianapolis, Indiana, apartment 75 to 150 units. They pull all that data, and then there they scrape it, find the owners of those properties, get the contact information. Second, this is where the cold caller gets involved. So the cold caller places well over hundreds of calls per day and finds the owners that are raising their hand and are interested in selling their property. And then the ones that are not interested to then follow up. That's a whole nother topic in itself, the follow-up, the follow-up side of things. And the owner has to meet specific criteria, meaning the property has it needs to be in distressed condition, need work. There is a motivation to sell, meaning that they may have just inherited the property, they may have just relocated and they're trying to manage it from afar and they're completely tired of it. And after hearing repetitive calls, you'll start to really understand the triggers. And then thirdly, their timeline to sell is either now, within the next couple months, or within the year. And then once the cold caller finds someone, that's when the appointment is then set for the acquisitions manager, or the person that is just above them. because that is a lot of calls that you have to go through. There's disconnected. There's people that are going to say just not so nice things to you at the same time, and that's a whole nother element too. Is you have to have a big enough why, because there's tons of no's that you're going to experience, but I can tell you that one yes pays for all of those no's, but it's just about getting over those no's and not internalizing it. So just going back is researcher, and this is on the front end. Researcher you can find on Fiverr.com, very affordable, or even Upwork.com. Very cheap to get someone to do that. Fiverr, you could put in skip tracing and you'll find tons of people, or virtual assistants, and then you could do the process yourself, document it, and then provide it to that individual of how you do the skip tracing, because there's different places you can get you can pull the data from. There's listsource.com. There is what's another one that's up there? There's PropStream. That's more on like the residential side. There is also CoStar. So you pull all the apartments or the data from there. You can have the virtual assistant do that, and you document that process, and then you can document the additional one to how to find that person's contact information. And then from there, that's when they push all the information to the person who does the cold calling, which cold callers you can find on Fiverr as well, and that is Fiverr.com, or even Upwork. I tend to go more towards platforms such as Upwork, or even direct to the Philippines. But through that is, I feel that Fiverr is more of a one-off type thing versus Upwork is someone that you actually want to bring on. So, and cold caller can range between, depending on how good the person is, $15 to $30 per hour. Sometimes you can get even cheaper, and then for the virtual assistant can be closer to $10, $5, as cheap as you can get, even lower than that. It all just depends, and it's just about finding someone to, if you have the system in place, you can simply delegate it, and then for you, the manager, you're the one that's doing the closing. Or you can, if you've been able to push yourself up even more, then you can plug someone else into that. And those of you who may not have the capital to do any of these, you may have to end up starting out doing all those roles yourself until you get the capital, and then you start plugging people in place. There's no excuses. If you're not able to make the calls yourself, then you'll have to figure out a way to bring someone on board. You may have to offer some commission for them being able to do it. It's just all about not looking at something as an obstacle or a barrier in essence. It's about how I can solve this problem and just figure it out. Because the story that I love to tell people is my very first deal that I was able to acquire is I didn't have the funds. I actually over withdrew my account. Well, the very first deal that I bought, 23 years old, and through that is I didn't have the cash. I didn't even have a credit score. When you would pull it, wouldn't even register, but I was able to find someone who complemented my weaknesses. And then also through this whole entire process, if you're able to have KPIs, which is key performance indicators, when you're hiring someone, you're able to set that expectation. This is something I just recently learned, is I do have KPIs, but I did not properly set the expectations that this is where you need to be on a daily basis, as far as the amount of dials that you have, the amount of appointments that you set, and then that would be able to allow you to reverse engineer and determine, okay, based upon if this person has this amount of calls, this appointment set, I can have a good indication this is going to be the amount of deals that I'm able to get from that, and allow you to have a clear picture of the revenue. So those are some tidbits there. If you happen to have any questions, don't ever hesitate to reach out, comment below. Love you guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.